After arriving in Kuwait completely exhausted the day before, I finally got some rest and was ready to explore. So I set out on foot to experience Kuwait City firsthand. In this video, we'll learn about Kuwait's history, explore the market, try some local food, and even visit the country's largest mosque. So over here in Kuwait, for me the first thing that's been very noticeable is that there are almost no crosswalks or anything like that. I mean, yes, technically there are places that are appointed to where you should cross the street, but it seems to be a car culture here to the extreme. As in, you just have to be really careful in crossing the street and watch out for cars. Kuwait holds somewhere around 10% of the entire world's oil reserves. And gas is just super cheap here. So really it should come as no surprise that people are driving around, and it's a very driving oriented place. And it's not just the fact that they happen to have a ton of oil here. Somewhere around 90% of the economy over here in Kuwait is just to do with the oil industry. It's the reason that this country is somewhere around the 5th most wealthy country in the world. But if you compare it to neighboring countries, such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, or maybe Oman, they've diversified their economy significantly less. Like, you see those countries investing in stuff like, I don't know, bringing the World Cup or stepping up their tourist industries. Here in Kuwait, that just doesn't seem to be the case so much. The case seems to really just be oil, oil, and oil. And the place is just not, well, I'm not going to say that it's beautiful or not beautiful. That's very subjective. The way things look in Kuwait doesn't seem to be the thing of greatest concern. They haven't invested in the same kind of things that you might see over in Qatar or particularly in Dubai, at least to that kind of extent. I mean, there are some pretty things here. And right now, I'm walking over to what might be their most interesting building, the Liberation Tower. It's just over there, so I guess I got 5 or 10 minutes of walking left. But the reason that tower is there, and the reason that tower is called the Liberation Tower, has to do, of course, with the history of Kuwait. Basically, the country's wealth began back in the 1930s. I think it was 1938 when they first found oil. It's a kind of similar story to what you'll find in all the Gulf countries. But one thing you won't find in all the Gulf countries is the fact that Iraq, neighboring country, invaded here. I think it was 1990. There was a big war, the Gulf War. You've probably heard of it at least by name. Anyway, when the invasion had started, this tower had actually already begun construction. At the time, I think they had planned to call it something like the telecommunications tower or something, and I guess that's what it still serves as. But when they regained their independence, I believe that was 1993, after the Gulf War was won in favor of Kuwait, they changed their idea and decided to call it the Liberation Tower. It's the second tallest building in the country, and walking up to it gave me the same kind of feeling I'd had walking up to the TV Tower in Berlin, Germany, or the Space Needle in Seattle, Washington, in the US. And the Liberation Tower over here is one of the tallest buildings in the world. I mean, technically, it's on the list of like top 50 or something. I want to say like 29th, not 100% sure. It's really tall, you can see that. But unlike a lot of other tall buildings, it's not really like just a tourist building or something, although it's a really essential part of the skyline here. It's actually used by the government for the original intended purpose of, telecommunications, communications. So yeah, Liberation Tower is a part of the name, but it's basically just a really tall government building. And they've really taken it to an extreme. They're not making any money off of this building. In fact, it's only open to visitors that aren't like working for the government there 2 days out of the year, February 25th and 26th, which I assume must be some sort of holiday commemorating that Kuwait is its own independent country again. So, a pretty and historical building for sure, but since I can't go in, I'm going to find something else to do. And there just happens to be the Souq. So actually the Souq spans multiple blocks. This just seems to be one of the kind of outer shopping mall areas of it. But there's just a lot of random, very random stuff for sale, like gold next to a blender. But actually, my wife and I are headed to Saudi Arabia after this, so we thought maybe get I think it's called a baya, this Islamic women's clothing thing here. Maybe they're cheap here. So far, the cheapest price seems to be 3 Kuwaiti dinar for one. I mean, the quality is not great. It's just made out of polyester, but I mean, 3 dinar, that's like, it's around $10 or $11 or something. Learn German.
It's my son.
Oh, your son learned German. Okay.
Student.
Ah, okay. Kuwait. In Kuwait.
India.
Ah, in India. Your family in India. Only you, Kuwait. Oh, okay. How many years Kuwait?
16.
Oh, 16. Wow, a long time. The shopkeeper seemed nice enough, but my wife really wasn't loving the abayas for sale. When we started to leave, the shopkeeper attempted to implement some slightly harder sales tactics, but it was short-lived. It's kind of a whole shopping area over here once you get after the Liberation Tower. There's also the more luxury type stuff like this mall here. It's probably not a very notable mall, except for the fact that you've got all 3 American coffee chains right next to each other. So you get to choose. Do you want Caribou, the coffee bean, or most likely Starbucks? So I just couldn't choose which coffee brand I wanted, and then I chose none. Actually, I was just walking through the mall. They do have free restrooms there though, highly recommend those. But over here is the other part of Mubarakiya market that I guess is a little bit more geared towards visitors maybe. Or maybe not, maybe it's just an experience, but let's go see what it is. The walk over to the center of the market is pretty interesting. You've really got a mix of old and new and everything in between in this part of Kuwait City. So a few blocks later, and after bumping into some local street art and some local cats, I found myself in the center of the pretty bustling market. So the market area is actually really big. All the way over there, I just walk from down there, and then it keeps going to another one of these kind of market streets. A lot of people here and stuff, but it's not really that, I don't know, it's not that interesting for me, honestly, having been to a lot of different Middle Eastern markets. A lot of it just kind of feels like a shopping mall that's outdoors. But it's not like glamorous either. I can't even put it into words that well. I mean, this kind of stuff. And then the rest of it, I don't know, there's like a section that just, it's kind of like going to a grocery store or something. It doesn't feel like a market really. It just kind of looks like a market. So I'm gonna keep walking around, see if I don't find something that appeals to me a little bit more. But if nothing else, I hope I at least find some good food to eat around here. It is quite the spot to listen to the call to prayer though. That echo is pretty cool. You can see the mosque where it's coming from. It's just like right beyond the market right there. And that call to prayer is also a great way for me to become aware of the fact that the sun has just, or is just about to set. Well, I don't know if this market's that boring or if I'm just being the Grinch. It's up to you to decide. But I know I'm hungry, so let's go find something to eat. Luckily for me, this market's got a pretty big eating area with a ton of different restaurants, but this one looked pretty solid. Got some mezza here, hummus, baba ganoush, or what's that called? Mutabel, tatsiki, or similar, something like that. And then some nice veggies, tabbouleh over there. And this to dip, bread, hummus. By the way, this restaurant's not all that expensive. It's 4 dinar for this mezza plate. It's not like a cheap country price or anything, but I guess it's like $14, $13. Pretty reasonable. And Arabic-speaking countries have this avocado juice, they call it. It's really more like a dessert, you could say, or something. It's like very thick, so good. Well, I didn't try this one yet, let's see. Even put pistachios on top of this one. Next level. So good. It's like drinking ice cream, but it's so good. And a little mixed shawarma. This is really good Arabic food, actually. This beef shawarma is like eating a steak, chicken. This is great shawarma, wow. And after eating, you get a chai that you should add sugar to. And mint. And the final bill comes out to 7 dirhams and 65 I forgot how to say the word for cents here. Anyway, a little bit over 20 bucks. Pretty fair for that. So I'd say that's probably a pretty solid example of what the local fare over here in Kuwait City is. Basically your standard Gulf Arabic food. Pretty tasty if you ask me. But there are so many different cultures represented in this country. In fact, I think it's like 1.5 million Kuwaiti citizens living here, alongside around 4.5 million immigrants. So somewhere getting close to 6 million people, and only a quarter of them are actually Kuwaiti per se. So to really do a proper study of the food over here in Kuwait, you'd have to look far, far beyond Kuwaiti food. In fact, you'd have over 100 countries represented in great food that you can find here. I know the Indian food I had last night was pretty solid. So even if Kuwait might not be the most beautiful place to some, they do have good food here if you know where to go. And there are a few buildings here that are inarguably beautiful, like the Grand Mosque, the biggest mosque in Kuwait. They do it all official if you want to visit here. Well, seriously, this mosque is just huge. In terms of a single room in a mosque, at least by like width, this has to be the biggest room in a mosque that I've ever been in. I say that just because I visited the Sheikh Zayed Mosque over in Abu Dhabi, which I think is a little bigger than this one. But regardless, this is definitely the biggest mosque in Kuwait. When I came in, it said it's about 45,000 square meters big. That's just really big. I guess if we're talking square feet, that's over 100,000. So huge. And it costs a lot of money to build as well. I think it's somewhere around 40 million US dollars. It said 14 million Kuwaiti dinar. So that's quite a significant sum for a religious building like this. But regardless of all those details, this is just a really majestic place to visit, regardless of your beliefs or identity or any of that stuff. What a place to visit. And in true spirit of the tradition of Islam, at least to my understanding of it, it's free to enter here for visitors. You can either do like a guided tour like some people over there are doing, or you can just come and do it on your own, like I've been doing. What a wonderful place to walk around. But that's where my time here in Kuwait has to come to an end, because it's almost time for me to head to the airport after I sleep a few hours tomorrow morning. So if you enjoyed this video, do make sure to give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you all in the next video.